Many interesting things, changes have happened on the so-called right of politics, especially in the US and in the UK in the past decade or so. Among those things are people who think the government is hiding aliens from us, people who tell us why Russia is better than the US because things are cheaper in the supermarkets, people who are not flat earthers, but not round earthers because they have left the cult of science. And the thing with such people is they will always exist, but you kind of want to live in a world where they're not prominent mainstream among one of the two sides of, let alone both sides of the political aisle. One figure who has become prominent in recent years is Andrew Tate. Now, I don't know to what extent we should go through his journey. It's somewhat interesting, but the scary thing is he is considered some sort of self-help guru. Self-help guru for men, who at some point decided that the best self-help philosophy out there is Islam. So he is now a Muslim. By the way, that was also an interesting transition for the American right. I remember 9/11 when Islamic terrorists committed the worst terrorist attack in history. And within days, I think the American right, started a process that has sort of come full circle with George W. Bush telling the world that Islam is a religion of peace, a bold-faced lie, which of course no serious Muslim would agree with, to the point where the right now has people who are actually Muslims or are just appreciating Islam. So, but of course, being prominent means one thing, whether you're on the left or on the right, it means you will get an invitation to be interviewed by Piers Morgan. Andrew Tate got that invitation, and he spoke to Piers Morgan. This was released a day or two ago. This was about the riots in the UK that Andrew Tate, of course, played some role in trying to make happen. We're going to talk about that today. Before we go to the first clip, I'm joined by Kirk and Jonathan. Any initial thoughts, Kirk, on what we're about to see, or Andrew Tate in general, or Piers Morgan?
I think I'll just start by saying I think as a suggestion for the Ayn Rand Center UK, I know you, from what I can tell, you have connections to some more higher level objectivist thinkers, people who might specialize in realms like epistemology. I think an interesting topic would be the epistemology of Andrew Tate, and because for as much as I try to know about epistemology, I'm definitely no expert, but this is a topic that I would like to, because I think we're going to get into it when we watch some of the things that Andrew Tate has to say. Some of his epistemology, his means of coming at truth and thinking about the world is it's pretty flawed to say the least.
I mean, the epistemology of Andrew Tate would make a great book title. I'm guessing the author would be Andrew Tate, although he did tell us that what was it, reading books is for losers or something like that. So I'm not sure how that'll sell, but I'm sure it will. Jonathan.
Well, it kind of goes back to the power of ideas and that line from the Broadway show done by a British composer, Andrew Lloyd Webber, Evita, where, the get them while they're young, Evita, get them while they're young, and young people tune into Andrew Tate. I was previously, prior to Ayn Rand Center UK, delighted not to know who he was. Now I have been forced to know who he is. And for that, we should be getting very generous donations from our entire global audience. But he's a very big influencer, especially among young people. And I think, to your point, Razi, given the importance of ideas, let's take a listen on what he has to say regarding this recent unrest in the UK.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're educating not just our audience, but our panelists as well. Jonathan, you're welcome. Now you know who Andrew Tate is. And let's get to know him a bit better. As Jonathan said, Daniel, let's roll the first clip.
To spread such woeful disinformation, given the massive following you have, and encourage people to take action against a caricature and description of who had perpetrated this, which was simply untrue.
Well, firstly, I'll start by saying I didn't know Nigel Farage said those things about me, which is a shame because I'm actually a fan of him. I think he's trying to do the right thing. I also understand in his political sphere, sometimes he has to hang other people out to dry to save himself because he's getting heat also. Secondly, I'll argue with you about the fact that everything I said was untrue. I think the only thing I said that was untrue is that perhaps he was undocumented. It was a 17-year-old male. It was a migrant. He did kill little girls. And advocating for people to stand outside and make it clear that they're unhappy with what happened is not a dangerous ideology. We live in a democracy where we have the right to protest and the right to make it clear when our voices are not heard. I recently protested against the Olympic ceremony outside the French embassy. I'm not sure if you saw it, complaining about how they depicted Jesus Christ, because I was unhappy with what I saw. And I think that when people feel like they have a voice, they're not likely to get violent. And the problem we have now is that people do not have a voice, which is why we're seeing rioting, which is why we're seeing looting, because people do not feel like there's a political solution any longer. And what I was trying to do is encourage people to stand up and make their voice heard in a peaceful way to avoid violence. Because when people would feel like they're not heard, violence is always the end result.
All right. Yeah, just for context, what he was talking about there at the beginning was Nigel Farage kind of repeated the lie about this being an immigrant at the beginning, and then later on he kind of blamed Andrew Tate because that's where he got it. And Andrew Tate is really, I don't know how he tries to get away here with the fact that he said this was a migrant who came to the UK on a boat, where this is actually a British person. This is somebody born in this country. Now we're going to get later to why Andrew Tate thinks this is not a British person, even though he was born in this country. But that is the fact, whether or not Andrew Tate's feelings care about it or not. Kirk.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out again. So Andrew Tate was challenged like, oh, you said something that was very misleading that might have gotten people riled up to do some horrible things. And that doesn't really seem to bother him. The fact that he spread misinformation, that he spread a lie that may have gotten people angry, that's not really what bothers him. He really doesn't seem to have any shame in that. But he would rather everyone focus on the fact that people are angry. Are they justified in being angry? Who knows? But people are angry, and that's all that matters, according to Andrew Tate, apparently.
Jonathan.
Well, there's something, from what I've understood of him, that's just so tribal about everything he espouses. And I have to chuckle a little bit when I say how he was clutching his pearls about the Olympics Last Supper, which I guess I don't even know if it was necessarily the Last Supper, but he was so aghast. Now, again, I don't really know who this shithead is, but hasn't he said the most misogynistic, terrible things about women? Hasn't he literally been accused of either, I don't want to speak out of turn, but basically harming women in some way? Again, I'm delighted not to know him, but he's so clutching his pearls about something he saw on TV on the Olympics. And, I said it with Candace as well. The more religious, the more suspicious. And I just love how the biggest jagoffs on the planet clutch religion as their emblem of virtue. He's religious. His opinion matters. And the fact that he takes that religiosity and puts it, front and center, I think says a lot, and not in a good way.
Yeah, Andrew Tate has a history of bragging about how easy it is to scam his webcam models for his business because they don't understand taxes, just to echo John's point.
And yeah, Jonathan, we don't need to know if it was the Last Supper in order for us to protest against it being the Last Supper any more than we need to know if it's an illegal immigrant, and in order to protest about this being an illegal immigrant. And look, he's talking about people getting angry. People are getting violent and they're attacking the police. So these are the people he is defending. These are the people he got, played a role in getting out on the street to commit violent acts to begin with. And yeah, now there's a limit to how much he can bullshit the audience when you have a clip of him saying this was somebody who came here on a boat. But to the extent that he can still bullshit he does.
So,
More,
Razi,
yeah.
We've talked, or I think you've had segments on this channel before talking about the activist group Just Stop Oil, correct? For those who don't know, it's the
guys.
climate cult, yeah, activist group. They go around destroying fine art, vandalizing Stonehenge to get their point across. And whenever they do this and people get rightfully outraged, their whole thing is like, well, what you should really be outraged is the fact that people are destroying the planet. We're destroying the planet, and politicians and our political leaders are doing nothing about it, as if that justifies their horrible antics. And I think we're seeing a similar mentality with Andrew Tate, where it's like he tries to downplay or excuse what's going on, doesn't really want to deal with facts or reality, just emotions. And if you point out the fact that he maybe made a mistake, then he tries to say, well, what you should really be upset with is the establishment.
Yeah, I mean, that's an issue that again is a big part of what people should be terrified about. This is not just some white supremacists going around attacking the police. Violence in as a means to promote political ideas is mainstream, and it's across the board, and it's of course it's always used to promote really bad ideas. So it's not just stop oil. It's now you have these counter protests slash riots, which are, of course, people who call themselves anti-fascist and want a government that, beats up people who disagree with them. And you will hear from the river to the sea chants and all those. So there are people who support the Palestinians. It's really the worst human beings imaginable going out to the streets. And, I would just say kind of the best way we can win from this is if we just let them go at each other and leave the rest of us out.
Isn't there a quote from Rand about like you don't see scientists taking to the streets like bloodying each other or something like that? Maybe we can have one of our super chatters, find that. I mean, there among all of this, all of these little tribes, BLM and the Just Say Oil guys, and there's like some nobility in causing not only a ruckus, but destruction. And Andrew Tate puts it like, we're going to have our voice heard, but that's kind of wink wink for let's go out and torch someone's business, let's go out and fuck with the police, let's go out and really cause harm, let's cause some type of harm. And it's just more tribalism. It's more who can get a bigger gang to go out there and throw some Molotov cocktails. And I don't think anyone is convinced by protests of this sort. I think there's no ideas behind it. It's just destruction for the sake of destruction.
Yeah, I think it's something like you don't see advocates of reason and science blocking the roads, and then I don't remember the rest of it. But
that says it all, right? Like people who want to build and create, don't go out there and throw a Molotov cocktail into someone else's building or business or apartment building. It's just not what they do.
Yeah. Yeah, but you do see the worst people doing that. And by the way, many of the counter protesters are from Muslim communities, because some of these protesters are against Muslim communities, which shows you can be against something bad like Islam or white supremacy and still not be good. And but Andrew Tate is kind of stuck here in the middle between these two groups because again, he is now a Muslim. So let's hear some more from him.
To me, let me make this clear. I'm a Muslim, and I think anybody who attacked a mosque is going to have to deal with God. I'm not worried about the full force of the law. They should worry about God itself. But I also want to make something very clear to all the people at home and clear to you that most of the white people are very frustrated, and they're finding an enemy amongst themselves to take it out on. I think that the white people on these streets have a lot more in common with the brown people on these streets than they do with the politicians, because that's the problem we have here. Keir did not just only say they're going to face the full force of the law. He told everybody with a point of view, everybody who's concerned about the safety of their children, that they are extremists. And that is the most aggravating language you can possibly choose when people finally have had enough of not feeling safe on their own streets any longer. We have people who cannot afford to pay their bills watching migrants arrive who are now being held up in hotels at the taxpayer's expense for indefinite periods of time. We're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine. Nobody voted for it. Nobody wants it. And everybody's struggling to pay their bills. Energy prices are through the roof. Inflation is through the roof. Now they no longer feel safe on their streets.
All right. Wait. There's so much bullshit that it does overload the crow, as Ayn Rand would say. Yeah, okay. I don't know where to start. If it's the anti-immigration, the nobody voted for it. Yeah, this is not a country where you vote on everything the government does. You just vote for the people in government, and they get to decide kind of that kind of stuff. The people who can't pay their bills, anybody who can't pay their bills and thinks it's because somebody is coming into this country is that's, by the way, that's socialism in a nutshell, which is why I always say if we did actually have a left to right spectrum where left is more centrally planned government, centrally planned economy, and right is more of a free market, then very clearly anti-immigration is a left-wing position, because it's the idea that government should ensure that you have a job, no matter if you're good at it, no matter if somebody else is better or does it for cheaper. You just have a right to it, whereas in a free market, anybody can hire or fire whoever they want, and you're not limited to within these borders. There's a lot more he said there. We might get to it, but yeah, Kirk.
Yeah, it's that what I said about Just Stop Oil earlier. Like, he doesn't want to take any responsibility for any responsibility he may have with angering people with bad information, with misinformation. When he gets challenged on this, he just wants to say, "Oh, well, we're sending all this money to Ukraine and people can't afford to pay their bills. It's the establishment and the elites and the politicians." Now, you could say that there maybe, I'm not an expert on UK politics, but I imagine there are probably a lot of justifiable reasons for people to be mad at their political establishment, but this is his means of deflecting any responsibility. And again, he reiterates, "Hey, well, people are angry, okay? People are angry. What can you do? People are angry, and that's all that matters." Whether or not their anger is justified for any legitimate reason is besides the point, apparently.
Can I say, Kirk is right. I mean, it's like emotion first, and there's no ideas here at all, except what I hear is collectivism and racism. I mean, even like that first 15, 20 seconds, he's ticking out all the different groups: white people and brown people and politicians and Muslims and Christians. And we've got all these little groups here, and they're all going to fight each other. I'd love him and our audience to pick up Miss Rand's work on the nature of government, which talks about what is the nature of government, because I think there is again, kind of objectivist terminology, a bit of a package deal here. Some of what he's identifying, I think there is some truth and legitimacy to, in terms of what is the role of government. Is it, feeding and housing immigrants? Well, it's a lot to get into with that. But, he at the end of the day sounds like your typical Newsmax host, if you know what Newsmax is, kind of like a boring old right-wing AM radio host, like, bills are too high and the government's to blame. And, I'll just say one more thing, like the endless blaming of the media elites in countries where the media is free, like the media elites have less influence on them, the media. And so he is a boring non-taste maker who is devoid of any type of philosophy worth following.
Yeah, and I think you're being generous to him. First of all, if he says something that sounds right, like the government shouldn't be housing migrants, it's not, he thinks, okay, the government shouldn't tax people to pay for hotel rooms for migrants. It's, immigrants shouldn't come to our country because they're killing little girls and stealing our jobs. That's
Right.
That's the essence of it. And
There's certainly like an anti-immigration xenophobia in all of that pervades a lot of the U.S. as well.
Yeah, and by the way,
I gotta ask you, Jonathan. So correct me if I'm wrong. You're an investment hedge fund guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever like make big investments based on like a feeling or emotion? Like, oh, I feel really good about this investment. I don't need to really think about the facts or check any books or do any digging or further research. I just feel good about this. You ever do that?
No, I just follow the advice of Wesley Snipes from Passenger 57. Don't, I'm dating myself with that reference. No, I usually rub a rabbit's foot, or I could cross my fingers, usually has the, no, of course, Kirk, to your point, you actually do advice, you seek evidence in reality. But, it's not even, I'd say, the political right. It's just both sides of the so-called political aisle now. It's just emotion first. And if the facts don't line up, it's like, well, they could have lined up. Trump had the biggest inauguration ever. Well, if not, well, he could have. It very easily could have been that. So, and Miss Rand has that line about if it comes down to going with your heart, I'm paraphrasing it, but if your heart or your head, go with your head. And Andrew Tate and all those who follow him, it's all about your heart, your emotion, and that justifies it all. And I think that's what a lot of modern day politics and modern day discourse is about.
Yeah, and Tom says in the chat, Tate will probably end up in Russia, his natural home. Yeah, there is, it does seem like he fits there. And again, there is that part of the right. I was talking about how we went from 9/11 to basically the right becoming Islamist in 20 something years. But before that, the right was kind of sometimes seemingly strong on Russia, whereas now they seem to worship Russia. And by the way, I think he moved to Romania and he said, this is years ago, so I don't remember exactly, something like he can get away with things easier in Romania than he can in the UK. Maybe if he goes a bit further east, it's going to be even easier. Yeah, Jonathan, you were going to say something?
No, and we're getting so many great responses on our YouTube channel, and just want to thank all of the people like Apollo Zeus and Robin, El Rito, Robert Naser, Jeff Bannister gave us a super chat, Apollo, because you keep us on the air. We provide 7 days a week perspective on current events influenced by Ayn Rand's objectivism. We're all students of objectivism. We've all been studying it for, many, many years. And, we try to inspire you to think about these ideas. One of our people said, why is Andrew Tate a thing? Well, we're bringing these modern, cultural and news experiences and interpreting them from an objectivist perspective, or trying to. So thank you for supporting us in what we do, and hopefully leading you on a path towards discovering Miss Rand as part of your life.
Yes, and even though investing advice that I did get from Jonathan in his book Price is Primary is never double down, I am going to double down on that pitch and say we are also now on Substack. There's one article, there's another one coming, there's a few coming. I have connections at ARCUK, so I've read some of the ones that are coming up. They're good, they're worth the £8. And if you're a member at the silver level or higher, or if you're an Inner Circle YouTube member, you get that for free. You need to sign up for free to the Substack, and then we will manually add you. Robert says, thank you, Robert, for the super chat. He says, 25 years ago, we used to say objectivism needs its own Rush Limbaugh. I guess nowadays we need to find our own Andrew Tate. So who will that be? Any volunteers?
I mean, it's like when people say, well, we need an objectivist president, and it's so obvious that the culture isn't ready for it yet. And the religious thing is it sticks for me because, I grew up, at least in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, during a period of great move towards secularization, especially towards young people. No young people I knew really actually believed in God. And Miss Rand obviously has written and talked a lot about that. But the fact that seemingly all of them still see belief as a virtue. Doesn't matter actually what you believe in. Christianity, any religion, and they hold that out as a virtuous sign. And why so many young people, from Andrew Tate, Justin Bieber, who's the one with the Hadid sisters, religion is all about their virtue, and they hold that front and center. And that, that's Miss Rand has that line I love. I don't remember where it is, but could be from We the Living, where the character says, you speak of belief, you speak of faith, I have none.
Yeah, and for me, the first thing I think when the first image that comes to mind when I think about religion is the Hadid sisters. So thanks for that. Look, I think it's much more pleasant if we keep filibustering rather than hear more of Andrew Tate, but we don't want to be accused of false advertising. So let's watch a bit more of that interview.
Yeah, it's a taxpayer. It's a migrant arriving on the boat with taxpayers' money, and I think a lot of people are upset about that. I want to make something clear because I'm a Muslim myself.
When you say typical man from Cardiff,
when you say typical
man from Cardiff, you are again telling people that in your estimation, the person that committed this came in as an illegal migrant on a boat. That is not true. None of that is true.
Well, what I'm actually doing, Piers, because you may not be aware of this because you're part of the legacy media machine, which is why you defended Israel so heavily.
I'm on YouTube.
You're not allowed to have your own opinion.
I'm on YouTube.
You're not allowed
on legacy media.
You're part of the
My
legacy
show
media
is on
machine,
YouTube.
and you're not allowed to have your own
And it's
opinion. But let me
uncensored.
explain something
Every
to you,
word
Piers.
of this will go up, as you know.
Perfect. I understand exactly how the media machine works. The fact that they kept highlighting that he's from Cardiff and showing pictures of him as a child, as opposed to showing pictures of him as the large, barbaric man he was, which stabbed those little girls, was a deliberate PR spin by the propaganda arm of the British government to try and subvert and subdue the UK populace because they knew everybody would be outraged by what they saw. That's why every
All right.
picture
You know,
of him is...
okay. I think the thing that bothers me most about this is because is the fact that I find myself in agreement with Piers Morgan, which is really unacceptable to me. But it also it reminds me of these posts I sometimes see on Facebook. You know, Facebook sometimes doesn't like stuff that people post on it, and then it removes it because it's their platform and they can do that kind of stuff. But I see people posting, Facebook is censoring me, and they're posting it on Facebook. And this is Andrew Tate complaining about the media while being interviewed by the media and highlighted by the media, and while showing that unbelievable, this tweet, typical man from Cardiff. This is after we already know that this is somebody from Cardiff. So he shows him on a boat with money. I mean, that's so despicable. This is doubling down on the lie after it was proved to be a lie.
I don't know how many of the Ayn Rand Center UK listeners are just listening and not watching, but something, because I just listened to this in the background at first, and then when I watched it back, I was like, wait a minute, are they just going to leave out the fact that the kid in this picture that Andrew Tate shared also has a knife, like a big knife in his hand, like, and he's like, oh, it's just, you know, someone coming on a boat with money, and everyone's just mad at the establishment. It's like, no, you're making him seem like one, he was an illegal immigrant, which he was not, and also like, oh, all legal immigrants are coming with knives because they have some sort of ominous intentions or whatever, and they're getting all subsidized by the UK taxpayers. So it's and yeah, just it's the thing with his total carelessness with the truth. Is like, if truth isn't a standard, then really anything goes, like the arbitrary. And so he can just you know, smear Piers Morgan, who I'm not a fan of, but it smear him as like being part of some like legacy media conspiracy. Even when Piers Morgan says, look, this is on YouTube, not part of legacy media, it doesn't really matter. Andrew Tate can just rely on conspiracy craziness to carry the day.
Yeah, he does a kind of a thing that I always feel like you can do on television. Like, you know, I've been on television for many years, and if you ever get stuck, you can say something like, well, the real point here is working with families and children, clergy, members of the community, to come up with solutions that, you know, you can just, and when he starts rattling off, Kirk, to your point about, well, it's all the legacy media machine and, you know, globalists and politicians, like, it's just that scare language. Like, boo, be scared, all these, I'm going to give you the real treat. And, you know, ultimately his politics, his philosophy, it's like, you know, it's Morton Downey Jr. repackaged now with some global influences. You know, it's the same old working man, plight of the average Joe who can't pay his bills because of immigrants coming and taking his jobs. Like, this was parodied on South Park effing 20 years ago. They took our jobs. And it's not true economically. It's not true in terms of the growth of a country. But, you know, this is once again kind of an old wine in new bottles, and so not radical. That's why if younger people now want to have something that's actually radical, they should pick up Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand's ideas are radical. They say you don't have to live for God. You don't have to live for Allah. You don't have to follow the good book. You have to make your life the most you can. And that's a foreign language to people like Andrew Tate.
Yeah, and Andrew Tate, by the way, speaking of foreign, somebody asked in the chat what accent is it? My first answer was like foreign, but it's some, I don't know what exactly it is. It's some mixture, I think, of British an American? I'm not sure. And yeah, there was something else in the chat I wanted to, oh yeah, Christopher reminds us that yeah, he Jonathan, you don't watch much of Andrew Tate's stuff, so maybe you haven't heard this, but he does talk about how we're all living in the Matrix. That's one of his favorite things to say. I don't think he mentioned the Matrix on this interview, but maybe I wasn't paying that much attention. I'll
Can you imagine like Dr. Peikoff or Miss Rand, wasting words like that, speaking so carelessly? Listen to Dr. Peikoff, how he talks about editing, and I've worked with him, how he edits every single line, every single paragraph, every single period means something. Of course, it has to correspond with reality. But for today's commentators, it's like reality, it's just feeling, man.
And Daniel tells me here in the Zoom chat that Tate grew up in Luton. Yeah, it's only been 3 days since last time we did an episode with a title, with a name in the title of somebody who's from Luton. I don't know if we're gonna get to the part where he talks about Tommy Robinson. If we don't, we'll mention it anyway, but let's get to the next clip.
Far-right thug who has been spewing utter horrible Islamophobic anti-Muslim rhetoric all week, and yet you have not distanced yourself from him. So the Muslim community in the UK now view you as part of the enemy too. You know that. How do you feel about that?
Well, I pray for my brothers, and I think the information I've seen and the replies I've seen have not been hateful from the Islamic community. Saying to Tommy Robinson that I will debate him on issues, I don't think is failing to distance myself. I debate you all the time, Piers, and we disagree on basically everything. I'm happy to argue with Tommy because we disagree on so many different points of view, and I think it's very important that we have conversation. The reason these riots are happening in the first place is because everybody's afraid to talk. I'm prepared to sit down with somebody I don't like and don't agree with.
That's complete nonsense.
I'm prepared to talk to Tommy.
That's nonsense. The reason the riots are happening is people like you and Tommy Robinson have been spewing utter disinformation, which has led people to believe that the person that perpetrated these despicable crimes was an illegal Muslim migrant who was on the MI6 terror watch list. Firstly, right. I'm saying you and Tommy Robinson,
let's be careful.
between you, okay. I'm saying no, between you,
but
you
where's
put
the logic
out
failure?
A completely
There's a logic
false
failure
impression.
There's a logic failure of lumping me in with somebody who I don't agree with and saying, "Oh, you and him."
So, do you
said
denounce
X.
Tommy Robinson?
Tommy Robinson and I disagree on a whole bunch of issues. And I think he's completely incorrect on his view of Islam. We're not playing this game of constant denouncing.
Do you denounce him for inciting the rioting?
I denounce him for everything bad he said about Islam. He's absolutely incorrect, and I cannot be his friend or support him for that reason.
No, for inciting the rioting by telling people it was a Muslim illegal migrant. I'm not going to say
it's not for me. It's not for me to decide who has incited the rioting, and it's not for you to decide.
Wow, you can't denounce that.
A court denounce what? I'm not going to sit here and say who's in charge of the riots because nobody knows.
Telling people he was an illegal Muslim.
My view on why the riots happened is because I believe that the native population, the Christian population of the UK, feels like their voice is not heard. I think if their voice was heard and they had correct
that's not why the riots happened.
Things would not be happening.
That's not why.
All right. Maybe we'll continue. Maybe we'll continue with that clip later. The native population is always a nice thing to hear. We know what that means, and everybody knows what it means. It's a way of saying something without saying it. By the way, something that Tate does denounce Tommy Robinson on is his support for Israel. But look, when we did the show on Monday, and I titled it, knowing it's going to be controversial, even among our audience, I titled it "The Tommy Robinson Riots." We had people saying, "Look, we love him. He supports Israel." There are people you don't want as your allies, and Tommy Robinson is top of that list.
Can I just say it, like, without philosophy, without a consistent philosophy, positions like this are like based on emotion, kind of whim from one to the next. And when people discover Ayn Rand and they discover objectivism, at least I'll give my own experience, I was often fascinated how, oftentimes you're surprised about positions, about politics, about different elements of it. But that's the thing I catch with all of these guys, these so-called influencers, and thankfully, I really still don't know who Tommy Robinson is. For some reason, I feel like that was an amusement park at Wisconsin Dells way back when I was a kid. They had little squirrels that actually they rolled around and they pulled them like on a water ski. But I'm guessing that's not the case. So I don't know who necessarily this is, but the influence of these people who don't have any consistent philosophy besides tribalism. Just tribal. What tribe are you part of? What tribe do you represent? What tribe do you lash out against?
Sure.
Yeah, again, I think we might have skipped over a part. At one point, Andrew Tate complains about how people are so emotionalist and looking for reasons to be upset. And so it sounds like he wants it both ways. He doesn't want people to be emotionalist, but then he's like all about emotionalism when he wants to talk about the angry white Christian male population of the United Kingdom. And hey, they're angry at the establishment. They're angry that they're sending all this money to Ukraine, and they're angry about immigration policies. And he also wants it both ways in that, like, he likes to really condemn and blame the establishment or whatever and the legacy media or whatever for any problems. But then when it comes to rioting, he doesn't really want to maybe condemn anyone who may be partly responsible for fanning the flames. And yeah, this guy seems to want to have it all ways, as far as I can tell.
I was surprised too we didn't hear globalists in there. I assume, Raz, you probably know that's part of his shtick, I would imagine.
Yeah, but yeah.
Also, I was thinking, he keeps saying, "Oh, well, people are angry." It's like I was thinking, like, well, do people ever like go out rioting because they're happy? And I'm like, oh yeah, we have often we see riots in places like America and I think the UK when a sports team wins a big game or a big championship, people go out and riot and burn couches and stuff, which is horrible. But you wouldn't just excuse that and say, oh well, the destruction of property and endangering the public. Oh, it's all cool because people are excited. They're big sports team won the big game. Can you really blame them for wanting to blow off a little steam?
Yeah, and if people are angry, Andrew Tate's face is with them. He seems like his facial expression is very, very angry the whole time. But anyway.
He's like full of malevolence. He's full of anger and doesn't seem to disavow any of the violence. He seems to, if not outright justify it, seemingly kind of understand it. Well, people are angry. And, Kirk, to your point, like what normal, rational person goes out and commits these types of not justice, mob, and not mob justice, just mob violence.
Yeah,
and the Just Say Oil are the ones are the same thing. It's like they're not happy until windows are broken, a police car is set on fire, businesses have been ransacked and looted. Like that's the end game to all these tribes. And Miss Rand's essay on global balkanization is probably worth a read as well. Given these recent events.
Christopher mentions in the chat, he says, what color is your Bugatti? Which I think is something that Andrew Tate tells people who criticize him, but the color of Jonathan's hedge fund is green. So
Bugatti? Yeah. Is that what he says?
What?
What does he say?
What color is your Bugatti?
Oh, Bugatti. Well, I mean, is that the measure? Do you have a Bugatti or not?
He has several of them, but yeah, for Andrew Tate, I think that is part of the measure. Maybe also how many wives you have, but I don't know. Let's listen to some more.
I want to make it very clear. I want to make it very clear, Piers. I want to make it very clear here. I will answer the question. I am an Islamic revert, and I do not want to talk scripture because there's people more qualified than I, but I'll make it clear. I lead with love in my heart. The Islam I was taught was one of peace and tolerance. There's not a single person alive who can force me to take sides or to hate anybody else. And I don't care what kind of Islamic person you are, to come along and tell me I should hate somebody else because of Islam is not the kind of Islam I prescribe to. I have half of my family which is Christian, half of my family which is Muslim. I'm half black, I'm half white. I do not want either sides of my family to face any kind of violence on the streets. I'm the person who's been calling for peace. You're reading out the odd tweet here and there. Why don't you read out the 30 tweets I tweeted explaining that we need peace on the streets and we need to restore some form of democratic representation to the House of Parliament. You only choose and lie by omission and try and pretend there's a problem where there's not. I love all of my Islamic brothers, and I also love every Christian, Buddhist, and Hindu. I'm a person who has no hate in his heart, And if anybody has a problem with me personally, I'm happy to speak to them about it. But all in all,
What about
I've not seen
what about
this
Jewish
hate that you're
people?
pretending exists. I've actually seen
What about
unlimited
Jewish
support.
people?
I've actually seen huge support from the Islamic community. That's what I've seen, because they understand that
Okay.
in Islam we teach each other to live
Okay,
and
well,
love
let me
with
read
peace.
you.
We're not sitting
All right,
here to try to hurt
okay.
each other. And actually, one more thing.
Stop talking for a
One more
moment.
thing I will say to the Muslim brothers. I will say this. We need to show the world that we are not the hateful ideology they think we are. We need to show the world that we believe in God and we trust God, and that we're going to stand up for our beliefs, and we're not going to allow ourselves to be watered down or walked all over. But we also need to understand that there's this terrible perception of us that has been painted by the Western media machine, and I like to live with love. When I tell people I'm a Muslim, I see fear in some people's eyes, and I spend a lot of time trying to talk that fear out of them. There's love in my heart. There's nothing but love in my heart for everybody.
Yeah, you keep
for
saying there's so
everybody who
much love
rioted,
in your heart.
I will pray.
Wait, was that it? Are we not going to hear him talk? Because yeah, he did. He
That
did.
enough?
What about the Jews? Like, he very specifically, mentioned several groups there, and the Jews were conspicuous in their absence. Oh, okay. Daniel says we can continue. Let's continue in a bit. There were a couple of comments in the chat. Somebody says, "Oh, okay. You three gays only talk, do nothing. People go watch." So I don't know what some of these words are. Some of them I do know, but yeah, people might be upset that we talk, and we talk, to each other, and we talk to an audience, and we hope to inspire people to think rather than go out on the streets and burn shit and attack the police. But for some people, you're not doing anything unless you're attacking the police. That's not us. Robin, I love that comment. How many wives you have and what color are they? Which is maybe a question that he would ask. Hopefully they're not the color of immigrants, because we know that's a problem. And thank you, Robert, for the super chat. Robert says, if wealth is a measure, gotta admire George Soros. Yes, and Kim Jong-un and Ismail Hania, although he's not as wealthy anymore as he was a week ago. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my experience, I'll just say Andrew Tate is the type of guy who has flashy things, but actually no money. And I guess it'll all come out when he's got all of his his lawsuits, etc., against him. But again, is what's just so disappointing is how influential he is. And I imagine if I was like a 12 or 13-year-old kid now, you're looking for role models. You're looking for people to emulate. And he seems confident. He's got a good body. He seems strong, and he does, I guess, get the girls and get a great car. So that's a big thing. So that's I think what's so disheartening, disappointing is that young people are idealistic. Isn't that what we always hear about Ayn Rand is like, oh, Ayn Rand is just something that's for young people, then you grow out of it. So there is this opportunity with young people to introduce them to ideas that can change their life, but not for the worse. And it seems like actually all of Tate's ideas are for the worst. Like whether it's the whole thing with women or Islam or everyone's his brother, it's just like one fucking philosophical train wreck to the next.
So I do want to say I think he does have a lot of money, and a part of it is the Hustlers University thing, which is him teaching people how to make money and basically making money off of those people. And I remember seeing something about that he had many people sign up for that. And yeah, so he has money, which is also, look, that's a sign of the culture as well. How do people make money? And apparently this is somebody people want to learn from.
Well,
I mean, this is one of the common defenses I've often seen from Andrew Tate over the years is yeah, he's a good role model for young men. He's in shape, and that inspires people to get in shape, and he's very quote unquote successful, at least financially from a surface level. He's made a lot of money for himself, and he drives nice fast cars, and is surrounded by beautiful women, and put aside any issues. Also, he's a man of God now, so I know he's been a Muslim for a few years now, but I remember it was a big deal when he converted to Islamia. But yeah, he's a successful man. He's a man of God. Let's just put aside any baggage he might bring to the table.
And if young people, and maybe not 12 or 13, but certainly 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, who are interested in ideas. I'd say young men or young women. Like, for me, Dr. Peikoff's debate with John Ridpath from 1984 against the socialists, if you want to defend capitalism, take a tip from these two men, how they act, how they carry themselves, not emotional, but appropriately so, thoughtful, well prepared, you're well researched, and devastatingly persuasive. So, that should be the type of role model. And, maybe we could put the link in the chat and we'll get it out there, for young people who are interested in philosophical role models about how to live and how to thrive.
Yeah, and somebody who needs role models maybe more than most of us is the guy in the chat. Sometimes I think reading trolls comments helps. So the guy who said that we're three gays talking and not doing anything also says, go help the Hummels, and then says, where is it? Talk, go to Ukraine, fight, go there. Look, maybe
Sounds like lyrics.
take that money you're putting into Andrew Tate's Hustlers University, into Leonard Peikoff's Introduction to Grammar, and maybe then we can not just read your comments, but also understand them and reply to them or follow whatever advice you're giving. We just can't understand what it is. So principles of grammar, Daniel corrects me. That's my advice to you. Yeah.
Isn't this another glaring double standard where he says, oh, I'm all about love and spreading the love, and he also, I think he goes on to say love also means wanting to protect your family and your kids, and this justifies all the nonsense he's helped spread. But he doesn't apply that same standard to, say, Ukraine, which starting in 2022 got invaded by its much stronger, much more powerful neighbor, and the idea that that people might support helping Ukraine arm itself to defend itself against invaders. I guess that's out of the question, but obsessing over immigration, that's love, because you want to protect your family from the kids that are getting subsidized and coming over on boats with knives in their hands, as he demonstrated earlier.
And I go back to that, idea that everyone, I believe, needs a philosophy and actually has a philosophy in order to live. And Tate is probably a great example of it. It's like this bizarre mashup of things that he's picked up along the way and kind of wears in them. And even if you listen to that last clip, it's like multiculturalism is part of his shtick, right? He's black, he's white, he's Muslim, he's Christian, he's got it all. He's as intersectional as it gets. And he's devoid of it is any type of consistent, rational philosophy. And I don't consider the Muslim faith to be a rational philosophy, or the Christian or Jewish faith to be rational philosophy. In fact, my line is, the more religious, the more suspicious. And, we need better influences in the culture, more reason in the culture. And once you have a philosophy, I remember Dr. Peikoff once referring to philosophy as a shortcut. Like it tells you in effect not what to do, but it gives you a shortcut on how to understand, this is my interpretation, the issues of the day. But, Andrew Tate, and I think many people lack that, and that's what they could find in Miss Rand.
Well, so thank you, John Wass, for the super chat. I think in a way, Andrew Tate's philosophy is a shortcut, but not in the way that Dr. Peikoff meant. But let's listen to a bit more of his philosophy and see if we can understand what he's trying to tell us.
You retweeted
Piers,
the notorious white supremacist Nick Fuentes on the subject of the riots. And you said this, he said this, Fuentes, it's clear that not only are these protests being amplified and directed by Zionist plants on social media, but the mayhem will also catalyst a major crackdown on speech and persecution of political right in the UK. So it's Zionist plants are fueling this, apparently. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think the point he was trying to make, and this is the meta point, which is very important, is that fighting each other is never going to work. When you have people who live on the same street,
that wasn't the point he made.
Fighting each other,
the point he made is that Zionist plants,
Can I finish?
Jewish people,
May I finish,
Jewish
Piers?
people on social media were amplifying the riots. You retweeted it, so presumably you agree with him.
Well, Tommy and you do work for the same people, so that is interesting that you want to try and bring this point up. However, let me make this clear.
You literally
When you have
retweeted
people on
Nick
the same
Fuentes,
street,
who is a disgusting white supremacist who spews anti-Semitic crap morning, noon, and night. You retweeted him. Do you agree with him when he said it's clear these protests are being amplified and directed by Zionist plants on social media? Do you agree with that?
Well, the point I agree with, if you will let me finish my answer. When you have white people and brown people on the same street,
do you agree with Zionist plants?
I'm trying to finish. I'm trying to answer the question. When you have black people, brown people, white people on the same street who are all upset with the government because the government has betrayed them, and I think everybody agrees that, and they're fighting against each other, this will only result in more government crackdowns and more power against everybody. Brown people and white people, Muslims and Christians, everybody will suffer from more totalitarianism from the government. Keir Starmer stood up and said, I'm going to be totalitarian and I'm going to use this as an excuse to take away more of your rights and more of your liberties and take away your ability to ever answer any question and have a true point of view, or to ever Andrew, assemble and make it clear that you're unhappy about certain things.
My question?
What Nick was right about was the result of all of this senseless violence, which is going to be a government crackdown and everyone's going to lose their rights. He was right about that, and that's why it's so important that all my Muslim brothers understand that violence is not the answer, and all of the Christians also who are upset and worried understand violence is not the answer, and that we have more in common with each other than we do these elites who are selling us out, and those are the people who are deciding that these boats can arrive on the board.
Stop talking for a moment. I'm just going to try one more time.
The average Muslim man on the street doesn't want boats arriving of undocumented migrants either. You can't turn up in the United Arab Emirates without a passport. You can't go to Qatar without a passport. You can't go to Bahrain without a passport. Only in the UK. Only in the UK do we have a country so insane that we have no border. We don't know who's there. Crimes through the roof. Nobody's safe on the streets anymore. And then when you point these things out, somehow you're some kind of racist and bad person. This is not anti-Islamic to say you need a passport to come to the UK.
But that's the problem.
In the United Arab Emirates, you need a passport. They have the strictest immigration in the world.
Fine, Andrew, had you just said that, that's fine. Okay, we would all agree that the small boats is a total disgrace.
I did say that, but you don't read it out.
It shouldn't be happening. No, you didn't. You told your millions of followers, and it was seen by 15 million people, this video, that it was an illegal migrant who had committed these crimes. That was a lie.
All right. Yeah, I was
honestly, I thought this is making the Hadids look easy. This show is making the Hadid show look like a fucking.
The reason I let it run is because there's a point. I just don't remember when it is, when he explains that what he meant, or what Nick Fuentes meant, was the Zionists who made this happen. That's a reference to Tommy Robinson because he's a Zionist. It's not at all anti-Semitic to say the Zionists are behind it. It's just a comment about a specific Zionist, which is, that's kind of that's the punchline at the end here. But yeah, so when he said about his love for Muslims and Christians and Hindus and Buddhists, and conveniently left out the Jews, at some point he does get to the Jews. Yeah, towards the end, yeah, it's always the Jews eventually, right? So,
is that what he said when he said, "Oh, you and Andrew or you and Tommy work for him"? Or they, what was that? They work for
the same people. Yeah.
Is that like, wink, wink? We all know who that is. Yeah.
But hey, he's just trying to spread love, Jonathan. He's a man of love. Come on. He's a good role model for young men. Come on. Stop making a big fuss about this guy. Also, I mean, he went off on his big spiel about illegal immigration and undocumented immigrants when, again, it's been well established that the accused, the attacker, was born in the UK, was not an illegal immigrant. And he's still going on about that from what is it, the Bailey to the Mott? Like, it's like, okay, we've already established that these attacks, that the riots were in a response to was not based on the fact that he was an illegal immigrant. And then he goes off on that whole spiel again because, hey, people are angry. Okay.
It also echoes, I'll quickly just say, something Dr. Brooke has talked about in recent years, just about the rise of totalitarian mindset. And it seems to be so frequently about blaming. Dr. Brooke talks about the other for your own problems. So, the reason why someone can't pay his or her bills, it's not their own choices. It's nothing to do with what they did. It's immigrants, it's China, it's this skin color or this religion. It's like, Kirk, to your point, it's like everyone else's responsibility but him or her own selves. And it's, to me, I see it as an opportunity to just stoke fear And when you can get people frightened, you tell them, you can easily tell them what to do. You can easily manipulate them. And that's what I'm saying. It's like he seems like a very old, tired Newsmax, Morton Downey Jr. type. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore right winger with all this other multicultural crap thrown in for show.
Well, usually towards the end of the show, I encourage people to support our work by becoming members or by super chats or so on. But I don't want to be accused of, not giving both sides. So I want to read some of what the star of the live chat has said. The case against giving us money. Jonathan, you not care homos? Stop
Or
pay this site, please. There's more. Stop give this 3 people money. That's in all caps. So that's serious. And it does go on. Yeah, from time to time. This is, it pays off.
Hold on. Razi, joke's on him because we obviously get fat stacks from Zionist organizations.
And
we don't need his money.
And Enric, Teneris, Snit, Paul, Townsend, Bonnie, Apollo, El Rito. We've got so many. Robin Heenan at $5 a month, £5 a month. You keep us on the air with 90 minutes of original programming inspired by Miss Rand's objectivism every day, and we can only do it. So let us be your philosophical advocates. Thank you truly for all that support.
Yeah, and there's more comments. Only ask money. Only money. Stop give money. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm enjoying this too much. Okay, I'll read this in my own time later. Daniel, is there anything that we should in any of the other clips that we should watch some more of, or have we one more clip? All right, you guys want to go through one more clip? It means we will go slightly over time, but I'm sure it's worth it. Let's do it.
Answer to, Piers, but this is going to be a very important conversation for decades to come, so please hear me out. The UK and the Western democracies are the only countries in the world where we will accept somebody born in the country, even if they have a different genetic lineage, are from that country. If you are born in China and you are not Chinese by appearance, they will never consider you Chinese.
But what do you think? What do you think?
Let me answer. But it's not about what I think, sir, because there's a dichotomy inside of the Western democracies, and this is extremely clear. If you do believe that somebody born in the country, irregardless of their genetic lineage, is from that country, the only way you can have a society function in this manner is if all people are fairly politically represented and if there is no two-tier policing. If you're going to allow anybody to turn up to a country, be born, become from that country, get preferential treatment in the political system and the judicial system, you are going to have outrage and you are going to have riots. If we're going to accept, sir, that people who are born inside of the UK at any point are from there, and that is their country, then it's even more important that Keir Starmer represents everybody. He doesn't stand up and spit vitriol, which is going to engulf flames.
But to answer my question,
more important that we do not have two-tier policing like we've been witnessing.
Fine. I completely agree there should be no two-tier policing. Everyone should be exposed to the force of the law in exactly the same equitable manner. But just to be clear, do you personally, Andrew Tate, believe if you're born in the United Kingdom, you're British or not?
Personally, I don't think my personal views have anything to do with it, and I think they'll just distract from the point I made. The point I made is that
literally put your personal views out morning, noon, and night. So why are you dodging the question?
Because I don't think my personal views are that interesting. I think I could say my personal views, yes. I believe if you're born in the UK, that you're from the UK. However,
you do. Okay.
However,
fine. No.
However,
all right. Yeah, I'm really glad we stuck around for that. So first of all, he gives this bullshit spiel about, in China, if you have a baby and it's born there, it's not considered Chinese. Yeah, let's learn from China how to be civilized. And then he's asked, well, is a person born in the UK like the person who committed this attack? Is a person born in the UK British? And then he says, I don't think my personal views are interesting. What are you doing all the time? And Piers, again, I'm really annoyed that I have to agree with him, but this is I guess it's too easy, but I don't know how this person gets away with it in his own mind with his audience. I don't know if this interview lost him any um, subscribers. I'm guessing it won him. It gained him money because these people will buy whatever bullshit he sells. But yeah, that was a very good clip to end with. Kirk.
Yeah, a couple years ago, he was doing a debate where he was straight up emphasizing this notion of my truth and your truth and emphasizing personal experience over stuff like data and research and, complicated, knowledge and facts and whatnot. And I think you see more of it right here. He doesn't want to answer the question and just straight up says, "Oh, my opinion doesn't matter. Hey, in China, this is how they might think of you. They might, really put an emphasis on your genes and your genetics and your history. And some other countries do it this way. Who am I to really tell?" And yeah, you can tell he just wants to really weasel out of a question. And yeah, I think it's fitting. Yeah, my opinion doesn't matter. And it's like, yeah, I guess it doesn't when you don't even think truth is the standard for analyzing. And again, like beyond that, like we get into the whole topic of, how do we assess people? Do we assess people on an individual basis? And then the whole idea of like how governments think of people when it comes to citizenship and what that entails when it comes to stuff like voting rights and maybe getting a driver's license or your NHS card or whatever. Not that the NHS should exist or whatever, but no, like this is a reason why governments analyze stuff like citizenship and that kind of stuff. And that's why that's why that stuff is important. There's a debate and discussion to be had there, but he wants to really simplify it so he doesn't really have to answer any questions. And again, his whole standard is what's true for you may not be true for me, and who's willing to know what's what.
Jonathan.
I'll just say two things stick out from Miss Rand's work and comments from this interview. One, and I believe she actually wrote this it's featured in a new textbook of Americanism. She makes the point, or she reminds us that before World War I, you didn't need a passport. You could travel to other countries, as I understand it, and as Miss Rand has talked about it, without a passport. That's a kind of a mark of, I think, achievement on some level. Even more is, and I don't remember exactly where the line is, but there's some discussion about how anywhere else in the world you'd move. And if I moved to Japan, I'd always be an American living in Japan. If I moved to Germany, I'd always probably be an American living in Germany. But people come to America, immigrants, and after a period of time, a year, 3 years, 5 years, they are American. They are truly American through and through. And to me, there's something so beautiful about that, something so exciting about that. I mean, it's the kind of thing that makes, I think, a culture rich. The fact that there is this influx of people who want to be there, want to work, want to be part of that dream and that future. So, Tate and I think so many others now see immigration as this huge threat, huge opportunity. And I think it's unfortunately it's based in wrong, not just economics, but morality as well.
All right. So if you thought today was a controversial topic, I mean, every day is a controversial topic, but tomorrow we will be talking about this video that you may have seen circulating, showing proof that the IDF soldiers abused a Hamas detainee. We are going to tell you what help people understand what that clip shows, what it doesn't show, and what we should take from it. That is tomorrow on the reality show. That is if we don't get canceled after tomorrow's episode of the Daily Objective, where we will be answering the question, is it moral to starve 2 million Palestinians? This is after Israel's finance minister made a comment about it's moral to do so, but the world won't let us. And the world is using that, of course, as a case against Israel. Thanks, guys. For people who are Reardon Medal or Midas Mulligan members, the course on the Constitution is today. That is the 5th session. There won't be another session for 2 weeks. But for people who are Inner Circle YouTube members, we've extended the period where you can watch all the previous lectures. So you can watch all of them for the next 2 weeks, including today's lecture, That course is alone worth the price of admission at those membership levels. I hope those of you who are not there yet use the next 53 minutes to upgrade. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.